Hello guys, so today I'm going to show you how to create the automatic door that you saw at the beginning of this video. For this tutorial I'm not going to show how to create data packs, as it does use data packs, but really it's just going to show the door itself. And it's kind of my way that I've figured out how to create this effect. There's definitely more efficient ways of doing so, but this is really my way, and let me know in the comments if you know of a more efficient way. So first we're going to start off with creating a frame for this door. So I'm just choosing to do a 3x4 frame for now. And then we'll pull up the code. Okay, so we've moved over to VS Code where we're going to start doing the code for the doors. And I've started just a basic little data pack. Once again, I'm not going to really go into how to create one, but basically it's just going to show how to create the doors itself. So for this, we're going to go into and create a new function for this file. Okay, so usually when I do these doors, I kind of separate it into two different functions. The first one being a door spawn function, and then the second one being a tick function. And then I kind of just like to label it door1, just so we kind of identify the different kind of doors if you wanted to make multiple, let's say. So we have a door tick and a door spawn. Now with the door ticks, you know, there is multiple ways to have it start out as a tick function. You can just set it so that the function in here plays the door tick, which is like very easy to do, but you can also do that in game with, let's say, a command or a repeating command block. And then it's good to do that because you can either turn off the repeating command block on like a data pack, or they only operate within a certain block range. So it's not going to completely lag out the game. Okay, so let's start with the spawn function. What I like to do is just start off with summoning a bunch of markers for where the doors are going to be located. And to just kind of speed this up, I've already got the positions of all of them, as you can see here. And what we're going to do is just add a tag at the end of it that has the tag of the door. So let's just call it door1 for now. And then we're just going to copy those to have multiple others. And I think it goes in the negative Z direction. So what we see here is that this is essentially just every single block that is of the door. And we're going to be spawning a marker at that location. Okay, so the next part is going to be to actually spawn in the block displays itself. For that, very simple command. So we're going to do an execute at those markers that I just had created, or written, I should say. And then I think, so for this you'll do both a type and a tag. So the type being a marker and then the tag being door1, because that's what we just called it. And then align it to XYZ just so it's aligned with it. And then we're going to run a summon command that summons the block display at that position. And then with a tag of, let's just call it door1 again. And then a block state. So the block state is essentially what type of block it's going to be. So in the little demonstration example, we made it smooth stone, I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah. So smooth stone. Smooth stone. There we go. Okay. Then the next line of code would be to sort of transform the block display so that it's the size of the door. And I've tried to do it in all in one step, but for some reason this doesn't work for me. Maybe one of you knows in the comments, like, if there is a way to combine the two. But yes, so we're gonna do a type. Sorry, this is wrong. So yeah, so as the block display with the tag of door1, essentially we're going to run a data merge command. So the data merge is essentially just going to transform something that's already existing, so an entity that already exists. and then that being the entity add s. So add s is basically selecting the thing that we are doing it as. So as this block display door1, we're going to translate it with this command. Okay, and then as I'm kind of writing through this, I will kind of describe to what each thing means. So we're going to do a start interpolation, which this just can be left at 0. This also doesn't really matter for this step as well. But what's going to matter is this transformation phase. So we're going to do that, write that out, and then write a translation of 0f, 0f, 0f. So these three kind of represent the three axes. This isn't going to matter for now until we want to kind of edit the door itself, and I'll show you what I mean by that. But what's going to matter for this step right now is to transform the scale. So the scale being 1f, so that's the size of one block in the x direction. 4f, because that would be the height of the door, because it's a 3x4 door. And then 1f again for the z, because it's once again one block. So essentially what we're going to do, what this is saying is it's going to spawn a block display at every single one of the markers. So we've summoned in those 3 markers, and because we only have 3 of them, then this will kind of block out the height of the door, if that makes sense. That's basically it for spawning the doors itself. If you'd like, you could also add in a kill, just so that you don't have the markers there once you spawn in the door, because you're really just going to run this command once. So we'll just do type marker tag door1. So that'll kill the markers so that they no longer exist. They really don't lag the game that much, but it's just there to really clean up the whole system. Okay, so now we're in game and we've gotten that function written up in code. If we now just do a little reload and type in the function, then we can see that we have those 2 functions that we had written. If we do function door1 spawn, now you can see our display for the doors. But what's evident is that you could essentially just walk through the doors, and that's not really what we want for them, especially if this is going to be like a closed door. Also, if you notice that because we set it as 1f, 1f, it's the exact same size as a block, which will be a problem later on once we move it up and down, and I'll show you what I mean by that. But let's now start to write the code for the tick so that we actually start to see how the door will move up and down. Okay, so the next step will be to create the tick function, which I had just mentioned previously. It's going to be using a scoreboard to do so, and it'll count down the scoreboard based on when you approach it, the door. So in doing so, because we've set this tick MC function to have this, now that this door underscore tick MC function will constantly be running every game tick. Also, before writing the code for the door tick function, first we have to create a scoreboard that will be the scoreboard that's going to be used for this. So let's say we'll create an objective as door, and then it has to be a dummy. And so once we reload this in Minecraft, now we have the scoreboard objectives sidebar, so we can see door here. Great. Okay, so we can now finally write the code for our door tick function. This is going to be a pretty lengthy one, so just bear in mind with me. There'll be multiple steps to this as well. I will go through each one, but there will be timestamps in the video that will describe the certain areas if you want to just skip along and just have the code itself. Okay, so we're going to start with an execute function. Executes are just amazing. They just let you do so many things with it. And it's going to be an execute positioned. So this position will be the position from where the player will be located, and how it'll identify where it is, where like the area of which the door will open from. So for position, it's a bit of a weird one because it operates from the lowest what's it called, coordinate system, and then goes to the highest. So what you usually want to do is start out at the lowest coordinate. So let's say if we let's say in red, where's red here? So in red, we want to kind of show the area in which the door will open. So let's say if this is the area here, maybe make it a little bit smaller. This is our area, 4 by 4. So that's the area in which we want the door to open in. So when we enter this, this is kind of where the door will open. We will start it at this block because it's the lowest number here. So he goes from 24 to 25 on the X, and then 26 to 27 on the Z. So we'll get that written up, write those down in code, and then copy that over into our function folder here. So we'll do positioned at that coordinate, and then as the displays itself, so we're going to be executing this command as the block display. So we'll do type equals block display, and the tag equals door1. So executing as the door tags. Okay, so we gotten this written up as the door1 tag, but what we want to do is as the tag not door1 open. Actually, we can just write it as door1 open. So what this is saying is that it'll execute it as the door1 tag, but not door1 tag open. Once these have been tagged as door1 tag open, this function will no longer work. And that's kind of when you use the exclamation point. And then finally, it'll be by sort by nearest, just to be sure that it only does one of them, nearest, and then limit, and then limit equals 1. So it's just to be sure it's going to only target the closest one from this position. And then if the entity, so this is kind of showing where the kind of range in which we're summoning this from. So we'll just right now do dx0, dy0, d00. Okay, so we're gonna go back to Minecraft, figure out the area in which this is located, or how big this is. So if we're starting here, this would be number 1, 2, 3. This would be 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 4 in the Z, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in the X. And then with Y, you can kind of just make it player height, maybe even 3 to 4 blocks. We'll go back to their code here. So we said X 9, Y 3, Z 4. So that'll be that whole red box that we kind of showed. And then finally, we will run a function, which will be scoreboard players set door1 door to 10. You can do, so what this is basically saying is, this is the scoreboard here that we just created in the load function. And what I like to do is just kind of do it for every single door. And you can also add a hashtag so that it won't show up. But for the purposes of this, we'll just have it as this for now. And so what this is saying is every time we come into range of the door 1, it'll set the door 1 score to 210. And so that's great. We have it at 210 now, but now it would need to add that tag of door open so that it doesn't constantly run this function when you come up close to it. So what I like to do is just copy this function down 1, and we're just going to delete this area here and run a tag. So run a tag as at s, which is the tag that, or as this function entity. We're going to add that door1 open. So it's basically just going to add this once this is run. And it no longer will run this first function anymore. Okay, so now that we have it set at 210, once we hit that location, we can finally start to count it down. And also based on where you are located. Okay, so now that we got those two functions, we can start to write the functions of how it's going to count down based on where you are located. So for starters, let's just copy that code down over again, but delete out most of this stuff here and maybe even here. Yeah, okay. So we're going to keep it as if entity. And if so, in this position, if the entity is in this that red zone that we kind of drew out, what it'll do, and if the score, actually, let's do if score, door1 matches, door1 door matches. So this is gonna have to match a score range of what we set, but also to how long it'll take for the door to open. So I've kind of figured out a nice little zone range of score and ticks for the door itself. So if you write just this number, that will be good enough for me. Also with this 210, this is kind of just an arbitrary number that I have set for my doors, but you can kind of change for your own doors as well and try and change that around. But you'll see what I mean by that. But yeah, so let's go through this again. So if it's in that red little zone, and if this score matches this, we will do scoreboard players remove door1 door 1. So if it's in this range for this function, it will remove 1 from it. Okay, so the next step will be to write the same code, but just to say if it's lower than this matching number here, then it'll count down. So for that, we'll write, instead of if, we'll do an unless. So with unless the entity is now within that red box. And then for our range, we'll do it as 1 to 60. Actually, let's do 1 to 59 because we want to pause it if it's at 60 or here. Or you know what, let's just do 61 to 60 here. Okay. So what this means is essentially if we're in that red box, it will count down the 210 score all the way up to 61, but then it'll stay at 61, keeping the door open. But if we come out of that range, it will start to remove that number. Actually, I think we need to... Oh, you know, okay, I see why there needs to be an additional code here because this won't work. So we'll copy over that unless, and if the code matches 61 and above, so if it's still within this range here, it will reset the number. So we'll do set door1 to 60. Okay. So basically this will completely change the number to 60 once we get out of range. The door will open and close immediately. It's a little bit of a weird step, but definitely it's a necessary one at that. So now we've kind of written the code for the scoreboard itself. Now we can start to change the door itself based on just now the scoreboard functions here. I think though for a last step, we're going to need to remove the tag on the door itself. So once again, we'll do an execute position. So this guy here, we'll do an execute positioned, but then this time as this guy here. So as this one, but instead of it being not the door1 open, we're going to do as the door1 open. So we're executing as that display that the block display that we just had done up here. You can essentially do this even with the player as the person, but I like to add it as to a separate entity just so that the player has no tags associated with them. And then unless, once again, within this range here. So unless entity was within this range. And then if the score door1 door matches 1 to 60, so within that small little range, we're going to run tag to remove the door1 open. So this will completely reset the tag added, and then the door can once again open again. So we've basically created the whole kind of meat and potatoes within these 6 commands. And now we can actually write the code for the door itself. Okay, so now once we get over to the game, we can see on the side here, we reload. You can see on the side that our scoreboard is up, and when we come to range of this red box, you can see, there we go, there's our door counting down. But once we get out of range, it resets to that 60, and the door will then end up closing. And this should really work for both sides. So we get in range of it, and there you go. Okay, so now we can write the code for the door opening and closing itself. Okay, so we're back in the code here, and we're going to write first off the function to open the doors and then followed by the closing. So what we're going to start out by doing is executing as our entity that is the door. So as the type equals block display, tag equals door1. And then we will write out if the door, or the score of the door 1 equals 209. So I like to do one score less than what we've set up here as 210. I've run into problems where it doesn't sometimes read the number because it goes too fast. So I like to just do one less number, and that has always worked for me. If you can figure out why, then let me know. But what we're gonna do is run a data entity data merge, just like we did before, and we're gonna start to transform our block displays itself. So if we go back to our spawn and copy this function over, just so we don't have to write this every time. It's a pretty lengthy one at that. And we're gonna change over a couple things here. So before I wrote this as 1, but for this purpose, we're gonna write it at 70 or 75. You can kind of change this. The more numbers you put, the slower the door will open. But I like to keep it at 75. I feel like it's a good speed for these purposes. And we'll keep the scale the same for now, but the one thing that we're going to change is our opening, or of our moving up of the block display itself. We're going to move it up 3.5 blocks so that you can still see one of the blocks kind of peering out of the door itself to show that it's kind of open. And then we'll add in, I think we'll need to add in a block state, if I'm not mistaken. Well, let's just do it just to be safe. So we'll do as name, and then wait, I have to add in a bracket there, and then add in as smooth stone. So that's going to be copying over our same block. So once we hit, so basically what this is saying is once we hit 209, it will move up our block display up 3.5. And it'll stay at that so long as we don't change it. The next thing, so because it's just a block display itself right now, and it really doesn't have any actual blocking capabilities associated with it, what I like to use is a barrier block, as it's a transparent block that you can't see, but it's obviously going to block the door itself. For now, I've done a very crude job at kind of like blocking off the player from accessing it. Basically, it will be filling in barrier blocks based on the number and the scoreboard. So if the score of Door1 Door matches, so what I found that 185 is the good speed for having it set at the 75 length here. So if once it hits 185, we're going to run a fill, and we're going to get the fill. We're going to get to filling in our door here. So we have, and this is another problem actually, when you use other blocks other than barriers, the block displays kind of go dark itself. So we're going to fill in first off the first layer here. We got their coordinates there, copy that over. And for this first layer, we're just going to do the bottom. So that's our bottom. And we're going to fill it with air. And just do a replace. And then we're going to copy this over two more times. And for a good speed that I found, doing it in 15 score increments works the best. And then all you have to really do is just change it so that this 56 reads as 57, and then this 57, or this bottom one reads as 59 to 58, because our door is at this size 3x4. So essentially what we're going to be doing is when it hits 185, it'll remove this barrier block here. When it hits the 170, it'll remove this one, and then once it hits 150, it'll remove these two layers. And what we can do, I didn't really throw it in the spawn, but we can fill this for now as a barrier block itself, so that it actually works as a door when we spawn in. So you can see, looks like a door. I can't get in, but it's actually those block displays that we have put on there. Okay, so going back to the code, so we've written now for opening the door. Let's do the same thing, but for closing it. So we'll copy that code over again. And then all we really have to change in this is changing this number here. So we write this as, I think it'll be, let's just do 59 just to be safe, because we kind of went through it again where do one less than the number we've written up here. So once it hits 59, all we're going to do is set it back to 0, so at its base form in which we spawned it in as. And then all you have to change is these numbers as well. So what I found once again is if it's at 35, 20, and 5, these are kind of like good numbers to fill those in. And what we're going to do is also just flip these around. So if we're starting at 35, we want to fill in the top one. So 57 to 58, we're going to fill that back with barrier. And then 57, apologies, that's actually should be 58 to 59. And then this one should be 57, this one should be 56. So we're just going backwards basically in which we did before, and then we're going to fill those both with barriers. And that, I think, is going to do it. So if we go back to their world here, and we just do reload, you can see our door now opens. With a couple of hitches, you can see the block display starts to show up. And even if you were to block this all out, let's say if this was like a wall, you can still see it because, like I said before, the block display is at a 1-to-1 size. So really that's actually a pretty simple fix to do so, but you can see that our door works, and if we come up to it, you can see our barrier blocks here. When you come up to it, it doesn't open until the door just opens. And if you're in adventure mode, you wouldn't be able to see the barrier blocks. It would seem like the door opens when the block displays move up. And there you go. Pretty easy. I guess I can just show real quick how to fix the problem here with it kind of peeking through the door there. So pretty simple fix. We're gonna go through our coordinates here, and you have to basically just shrink the size of these block displays so that it's a little bit smaller than the full block so that it doesn't peer through. So as you can see, it's on the x-axis there. So we just have to transform our x-axis in the sort of function here, and that of being the scale. So the scales works a little weird because you have to you can only transform one side of the scale. So if you're to do like 0.8 to make it a little bit smaller, it will only do one side of it. So essentially what you have to do is transform the scale and its relative location. So it'll actually make it 0.2 smaller, but it'll move it back 0.1, so it's actually 0.1 on either side. And we'll have to do the same for up here. So that being 0.1, and then the scale of it being 0.8. Okay, so let's copy this, or let's reload this back into the game. And we can see that it just slightly is smaller than the block itself. And when it moves up now, it just goes into the block and you can no longer see it. Very simple stuff. And then you can also add, sounds to it so it opens when you get up close. That's pretty self-explanatory to do. But really this is the easiest, or I guess my way of doing an operable door. Okay, so now we're back in the world itself, and you can start to see now how that door really operates. So when you get up close to it, it opens up and then closes once you get farther away. And yeah, pretty simple stuff. The bridge that you saw in the opening also uses a similar technique of just block displays and barrier blocks. I've also found out in creating different door variations. So in this case, we see a door, lock, and key. And then the other variation, that of being a switch that's kind of controlled on a little pulley lever. These are also using block display entities. But as you can see, you click the switch, the door opens all on its own, and it kind of serves in a similar sort of fashion. And then it closes on its own as well. Yeah, so if you guys want to see more tutorials of like this, even of maybe these door variations, let me know in the comments, or even in this about this world itself. It's sort of an adventure map that I've been working on, and looking for builders itself. But thanks for watching today. Until next time, bye bye.